What happens when an entitled celebrity thinks they can control a late-night talk show? Tonight, we dive into one of the most explosive interviews in television history, where a guest's outrageous behavior led to something unprecedented. You're about to witness how a simple question about charity work spiraled into a complete meltdown, with accusations flying and a host pushed to his absolute limit. This is the story of how one interview went from friendly chat to total disaster in under 20 minutes. The Late Show, studio buzzed with its usual pre-taping energy. Stephen Colbert sat behind his desk, reviewing his notes one final time. His producers had briefed him thoroughly about tonight's guest, a former royal who had built a media empire on controversy and carefully crafted victim narratives. The audience was already seated, cameras positioned, and the familiar theme music ready to roll. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Meghan Markle," Colbert announced with his trademark grin. As the studio audience erupted in polite applause, she walked onto the stage wearing an elegant black dress, her smile practiced and camera-ready. The handshake was brief, the pleasantries minimal. "Great to have you here," Colbert said as they settled into their chairs. "I have to say, you've been quite busy lately with your various projects." "Thank you for having me, Stephen." "Yes, it's been an incredible journey of growth and authenticity," she replied, her voice carrying that familiar tone of rehearsed sincerity. Colbert leaned forward slightly. "Let's start with something your fans are curious about. Your recent charity work has been getting attention, but some critics have pointed out that very little of the money raised actually reaches the intended recipients. Can you walk us through how your foundation operates?" The question hung in the air for a moment. Meghan's smile faltered almost imperceptibly, but she quickly recovered. "Stephen, I think there's been some misinformation circulating. What we do is create sustainable change, not just throw money at problems, but the financial reports show that over 70% of donations go to administrative costs and salaries." Colbert pressed, his journalist instincts kicking in. "I'm not here to discuss internal financial matters," Meghan replied, her voice taking on a sharper edge. "I'm here to talk about the positive impact we're making in communities around the world." The studio audience began to sense the tension. Colbert glanced at his notes, then looked back at her. "I understand. But transparency is important when you're asking the public for donations. Surely you can explain why such a large percentage goes to overhead." "What I can explain," Meghan snapped, her composure beginning to crack, "is that you're clearly trying to ambush me with gotcha questions. This isn't journalism. It's a hit job." Colbert's eyebrows raised slightly. "I'm sorry, but asking about publicly available financial information isn't an ambush. It's a legitimate question your donors deserve an answer to." "My donors? These aren't my donors, Stephen. These are people who believe in creating meaningful change, not feeding into tabloid narratives," she shot back, voice rising. "The numbers come from your own tax filings, not tabloids," Colbert replied calmly. "But let's move on. You've been vocal about privacy rights, yet you've done numerous interviews, podcasts, and documentaries, sharing very personal details about your life. How do you reconcile wanting privacy while simultaneously courting publicity?" Meghan's face flushed. "Are you seriously asking me that after everything I've been through, the harassment, the racism, the complete lack of support from institutions that should have protected me? I'm asking about the apparent contradiction between claiming to want privacy while actively seeking media attention," Colbert said, tone professional but firm. "There's no contradiction when you're trying to correct lies and misinformation," she replied, her voice becoming more agitated. "When people are spreading false narratives about you, you have a responsibility to set the record straight. But some of the details you've shared seem quite personal things that go beyond correcting misinformation. For instance, your recent podcast episode about intimate conversations with family members. Those weren't intimate conversations. They were examples of the systemic issues I was dealing with." Meghan protested, her hands gesturing more emphatically. Colbert nodded slowly. "Okay, let's talk about those systemic issues. You've made some pretty serious allegations about the royal family, including claims about racism and lack of support. But when pressed for specific examples or evidence, you often speak in generalities. Can you give us concrete examples?" "I've given plenty of examples," Meghan said, her voice taking on a defensive tone. "The problem is that people don't want to hear the truth. They want to protect an institution that has shown its true colors." "What specific incident of racism occurred? Who said what to whom?" Colbert asked directly. Meghan paused, her jaw tightening. "I'm not going to repeat conversations that were meant to be private, but you've already discussed them publicly in other interviews," Colbert pointed out. "You've made these allegations the centerpiece of your narrative. Surely, you can provide details to support such serious claims." "I don't have to prove anything to you or anyone else," Meghan replied, her voice rising again. "The fact that you're even questioning this shows exactly the kind of bias I'm talking about." The studio audience was completely silent now, sensing the interview spiraling out of control. Colbert maintained his composure, but his expression showed he was not going to back down. "I'm not questioning your experiences," he said steadily. I'm asking for specifics about claims that have had significant impact on public opinion about the royal family. That's not bias. That's basic journalism. Basic journalism. Meghan laughed bitterly. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You bring me on your show under false pretenses, then attack me with loaded questions designed to make me look bad. The questions were submitted to your team in advance. Colbert replied. Your publicist approved this line of questioning. My publicist never approved this ambush, Meghan shot back, her voice increasingly hostile. This is completely inappropriate and unprofessional. The tension in the studio was palpable as the interview continued to deteriorate. Setting the stage for an even more explosive confrontation, Colbert took a deep breath, clearly trying to regain control. Look, I think we can both agree that this conversation has gotten more heated than intended. Let's try to reset and focus on your current projects. No, Stephen, we can't just reset, Meghan replied, her voice dripping with indignation. You've already shown your true intentions. This entire interview has been designed to discredit me from the moment I walked out here. That's simply not true, Colbert said firmly. These are standard questions that any public figure would be asked, especially someone who has made such significant public statements. Standard questions. Meghan's voice pitched higher. You're treating me like a criminal defendant instead of a guest on your show. This is hostile and completely unprofessional. The studio audience exchanged uncomfortable glances. Some began shifting in their seats, clearly sensing this was unlike any interview they had witnessed before. The cameras continued rolling, capturing every moment of the escalating confrontation. I'm treating you like someone who has made serious public allegations and asking you to substantiate them, Colbert replied, patience wearing thin. Let's try a different approach. You've spoken extensively about your mental health struggles during your time in the royal family. You mentioned feeling suicidal. That's obviously a very serious claim. Are you questioning my mental health struggles now? Meghan interrupted, eyes flashing with anger. Are you really going to sit there and suggest I was lying about contemplating suicide? I'm not suggesting anything, Colbert said calmly. I'm asking about the timeline and the help you sought. You said you asked for help but were denied. Who specifically did you ask? What kind of help did you request? I asked the institution, the people who were supposed to protect me, Meghan replied vaguely. I went to HR. I went to senior staff members, but the palace has stated that they have no record of any formal request for mental health support. They've said that had such a request been made, it would have been immediately addressed, Colbert pressed. Of course, they would say that. Meghan scoffed. They're protecting themselves. They're not going to admit they failed someone who is crying out for help. So, you're saying they're lying? Colbert asked directly. I'm saying they're protecting an institution that has shown it cares more about its image than the people within it. Meghan deflected. That's not an answer to my question, Colbert pointed out. Did you make formal requests for mental health support? And if so, to whom specifically? Meghan's face reddened. I don't have to provide you with a detailed breakdown of my lowest moments to satisfy your curiosity, Stephen. The fact that you're even asking these questions shows a complete lack of empathy. I'm asking these questions because mental health is a serious issue, Colbert replied firmly. If institutions are failing people who need help, that's important. But if you're going to make such serious allegations publicly, people deserve to know the specifics. People deserve to know that I was suffering and no one helped me. Meghan shot back. That should be enough. The fact that you need more proof shows exactly the kind of skepticism that prevents people from speaking out. It's not skepticism, it's journalism, Colbert said, voice hardening. When someone makes claims that damage reputations in institutions, those claims need to be substantiated. Damage reputations. Meghan's voice reached a new pitch. What about the damage to my reputation? What about the years of racist attacks and harassment I endured while they did nothing to protect me? Let's talk about those racist attacks, Colbert said, leaning forward. You've made very serious allegations about racist comments from family members. Can you tell us specifically what was said and who said it? I've already addressed this in previous interviews. Meghan replied evasively. Actually, you haven't, Colbert countered. You've alluded to conversations about your son's skin color, but you've never specified who made these comments or what exactly was said. Because I'm trying to protect people, even people who didn't protect me, Meghan said, her voice rising, agitation creeping in. But you've already damaged those people by making the allegations public, Colbert pressed. If you're going to make such serious claims, don't you owe it to everyone involved to be specific? I don't owe anyone anything, Meghan snapped. I've been through enough without having to justify every detail of my trauma to satisfy your need for a gotcha moment. This isn't about gotcha moments, Colbert said, his composure beginning to crack. This is about truth and accountability. You've made allegations that have had serious consequences for people and institutions. You can't just make vague claims and then refuse to provide details when questioned. I can do whatever I want, Meghan said defiantly. I don't answer to you or anyone else. I've told my truth, and that's enough. Your truth. Colbert's eyebrows shot up. There's only one truth. And if you're not willing to provide specifics about these serious allegations, maybe they shouldn't have been made public in the first place. How dare you? Meghan's voice shook with anger. How dare you suggest I shouldn't have spoken out about the racism and abuse I experienced? You have no idea what I went through. I'm not suggesting you shouldn't speak out, Colbert said firmly. I'm suggesting that if you're going to make serious allegations, you should be prepared to back them up with specifics. I don't have to back up anything to you. Meghan shot back. The fact that you're demanding proof of my trauma shows exactly the kind of victim-blaming mentality that keeps people silent. I'm not victim-blaming, Colbert said, voice rising slightly. I'm asking for the same level of accountability that any public figure would be expected to provide when making serious allegations. Any public figure? Meghan laughed bitterly. You mean any black woman who dares to speak out against powerful white institutions, right? Because that's what this is really about. The studio fell into stunned silence. Even the production crew seemed taken aback by the direction the interview had taken. Colbert stared at her, processing what she had just said. That's completely inappropriate, he said finally. You're now suggesting that my questions are racially motivated, which is both unfair and untrue. Meghan challenged. Would you be grilling a white woman this aggressively about her mental health struggles and experiences with racism? I would ask the same questions of anyone who made such serious public allegations. Colbert replied firmly. Race has nothing to do with it. Everything has to do with race when you're a black woman speaking truth to power, Meghan shot back. But you wouldn't understand that, would you? The tension in the studio had reached a breaking point. Both host and guest were clearly beyond any hope of civil discourse. The atmosphere was electric, crackling with barely contained rage. I need to stop you right there, Colbert said, his voice cutting through the silence like a knife. You just accused me of racial bias for asking legitimate journalistic questions. That's completely out of line and frankly, it's insulting. Insulting. Meghan's voice cracked with indignation. What's insulting is being brought on a show under false pretenses and then subjected to this interrogation. You're trying to tear me down because you can't handle a strong black woman speaking her truth. This has nothing to do with your race or your strength, Colbert said, patience thinning. This has to do with your refusal to provide basic substantiation for serious allegations you've made publicly. That's not strength. That's deflection. Deflection. Meghan stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I'm not deflecting anything. I'm refusing to be bullied by someone who clearly has an agenda. The only agenda here is getting honest answers to honest questions, Colbert said, voice firm, remaining seated. Something you seem incapable of providing. I don't have to provide you with anything. Meghan shot back, her voice echoing through the studio. I came here in good faith, and you've turned this into a witch hunt. Good faith. Colbert's voice rose. You've accused me of racial bias, questioned my professionalism, and refused to answer basic questions about claims you've made publicly. That's not good faith. That's manipulation. Manipulation. Meghan's eyes flashed dangerously. You want to talk about manipulation? Let's talk about how you've edited this interview to make me look bad. Let's talk about how you've framed every question to trip me up. Meghan snapped. This is a live taping, Colbert said incredulously. Nothing has been edited. Everything you've said and done has been in front of this audience. That's exactly what someone with an agenda would say, Meghan shot back, her voice growing erratic. You probably coached this audience to react a certain way. The audience exchanged nervous glances. Murmurs rippled through the studio. A few shook their heads, unsure of what to make of the escalating tension. Are you seriously suggesting I've manipulated my audience? Colbert asked, disbelief in his voice. You're now attacking not just me, but the integrity of this entire show and everyone in it. I'm exposing the truth about how the media works, Meghan declared, a manic edge to her tone. This is exactly what drove me to contemplate suicide. Don't you dare, Colbert cut in sharply. Don't use mental health as a weapon to dodge accountability. That's not just inappropriate, it's dangerous. Dangerous. Meghan laughed harshly. What's dangerous is bringing someone on your show and ambushing them with hostile questions designed to make them look unstable. The only person making you look unstable is you, Colbert replied bluntly. Your behavior tonight has been completely inappropriate and, frankly, revealing. Revealing of what? Meghan challenged, venom in her tone. Revealing of someone who can't handle being asked to back up their claims with facts, Colbert said, leaning forward. Someone who immediately plays the victim when challenged, who uses race as a shield, and who acts like the basic standards of accountability don't apply to them. How dare you psychoanalyze me? Meghan seethed. You don't know anything about me or what I've been through. I know what you've told the public, Colbert said steadily, and I know that when asked to provide specifics about those claims, you've deflected, attacked, and made baseless accusations against me and this show. Baseless. Meghan's voice pitched shrill. Everything I've said tonight is completely justified. You've been hostile and unprofessional from the moment I sat down. I've been professional, Colbert said firmly. I've asked fair questions, given you multiple opportunities to clarify your statements, and maintained my composure despite your increasingly erratic behavior. Erratic behavior. Meghan moved closer to his desk, agitation mounting. Defending myself against your attacks is erratic. I think accusing me of racial bias, questioning my show's integrity, suggesting I manipulated the audience, and refusing to answer basic questions about your public statements is erratic. Colbert shot back. Yes, he said firmly, not backing down. Then maybe this interview is over, Meghan declared, starting to remove her microphone. Maybe it is, Colbert agreed, calm but unyielding. But before you go, let me be clear. You came on this show to promote your projects and share your story. Instead, you've shown viewers exactly who you are when challenged. Defensive, hostile, and dishonest. You've made serious allegations you refused to substantiate. And when pressed, you resorted to personal attacks and playing victim. I'm not playing victim, Meghan protested, her bravado faltering. You've blamed me, my show, my audience, and even society for your inability to answer simple questions. Colbert continued. That's not strength, that's weakness, that's deflection, and frankly, it's insulting to real victims of racism and abuse. You have no right to judge me, Meghan's voice cracked. I have every right to judge your behavior on my show, Colbert said, and your behavior tonight has been completely unacceptable. You've shown a total lack of respect for this platform, for me, and for the audience here for honest conversation. This conversation is over. Meghan ripped off her microphone, letting it clatter onto the chair, and stormed toward the exit.
Yes.
It is, Colbert said, turning to face the camera. Ladies and gentlemen, that was supposed to be an interview about projects and charitable work. Instead, you witnessed something unprecedented in television history. I've been doing this a long time, and I've never had a guest behave this way. We ask tough questions fairly and with respect, but what you saw tonight was someone who couldn't handle being held accountable for their own words and actions. The audience sat in stunned silence, still processing what had just unfolded. The studio, once buzzing with energy, now seemed to hold its breath in the aftermath of a confrontation no one would forget. The studio hung in an uneasy silence, the weight of what had just unfolded settling over everyone. An interview meant to polish a public image had, instead, exposed the raw truth about someone who claimed to stand for honesty and authenticity. That's the full story of one of the most explosive moments in television history. What do you think? Did the guest crumble under pressure, or was the host too relentless? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want more deep dives into controversial interviews and unforgettable celebrity meltdowns, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell because the next explosive story is just around the corner.